You guys remember that Smash Bros. Game for the PS3? PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was a Smash Bros.-like game released on the PlayStation 3 in 2012. This game featured a lot of characters, mostly from PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 eras of Sony. It did have some deeper cut characters like Sir Daniel Fortescue, Spike from Ape Escape, although they used his PS2 design. It was missing a lot of core characters, mainly from the PS1 era. It didn't have Crash, or Spyro, or Cloud, or Snake, or Lara Croft Tomb Raider. A lot of these characters that people associate with the brand, especially if you're celebrating the entire history of the company. And even with certain characters that they did bring, like I mentioned, Spike from Ape Escape is from the PS2 game, not the PS1 game that everyone knows him from. Toro, the PS1 mascot cat guy, was there more representing his new party game for the PS3. And then that goes into a huge criticism a lot of people had, where the game was more advertising newer games and celebrating what was then and now, and not the history, the big, great history that the company had with all of its franchises. So maybe like 5 or so years ago, I had this idea of looking back and seeing what I would do if I were to make one. A lot of people will look at a potential sequel to the game, so being like a PS4 game or a PS5 game. I think that's a great idea. It got me thinking, if I were to do something like that, PlayStation has this wonderful, issue of every generation kind of feels like a new set of characters, a whole new group of mascots. They never typically have, the same ones. Sometimes there's crossover, but a legit sequel for the game, I would really celebrate that essence. PlayStation has been really good at having different mascots for different generations. So if you look at something like a roster, I would separate it in that sense. PS1 characters, PS2 characters, PS3 and PS4 characters. This way, you can even get different versions of the same character. Kratos from PS3 is way different than Kratos from PS4. It could be totally different character. Now, that's just me for a sequel. It did get me thinking, what would these rosters actually look like? Now, I won't go into all the others, but it did spark an idea in my head that I could probably do a PlayStation 1 version of this game. I first thought of this idea maybe like 5 or so years ago. And at that time, I was getting into more PS1 and 64 art styles, making models and characters like that. And at the point that I'm at now, I can actually make them and make an animation around them. So that was my idea. Now you can watch the actual animation here. It took me about 2 months to make. I had already made Spike from Ape Escape just on my own, and I decided that maybe I should just push for this initial 4 characters that I wanted to pick for this concept. Now, something that I think people might be a bit disappointed in, this is just an art concept. It's not an actual game, and I don't want to make it an actual game. I don't have the time, and this project wouldn't make any money. So that's not something I can do. However, I am releasing the models for free. You can just go grab them. You can go make the game yourself. All the art that I show here, you can even use as the art bible for the game, and I plan on making more in the future that hopefully makes this game look even more like a package that never existed. So with that being said, why did I pick these 4 characters? So when thinking about a PlayStation Smash Bros., the first 2 characters that should come to mind, especially if you're in the West, should be Crash and Spyro. These 2 characters are, in my opinion, PlayStation, especially PlayStation 1. I myself was a big Crash kid when I was younger. I didn't really play Spyro. I played it like at friends' houses and stuff, but I wasn't really one of them, but I knew a lot of kids that liked this character, and I've always enjoyed the character quite a bit. So these 2 are absolute no-brainers to include. So then we go to another one, Spike from Ape Escape. Now, the Ape Escape games maybe aren't as relevant in terms of sales, in terms of overall cultural influence. I would say they're so important to the system's history. Now, I'm not quite super sure on the history here, but I know a lot of big important PlayStation developers worked on this project, and a core thing that it added was one of the first games to use 2 analog sticks in its control scheme. Now, I didn't use it like we use it, for one controls the camera, one controls the movement, but it was really influential at starting the process of using the dual analog sticks, and that's very important. But above all, the vibes are perfect. Like, if you look at all the games that were on like the PS1, Ape Escape is one that I just feel it's PlayStation 1 perfectly. So that's why I put the character here, and it is a lot more of a, I really like the character, I really like Spike, and I really liked making the character. So this one, where I do think it's super important to the legacy, I mean Astrobot, that team worked on it, and they referenced, they put a whole level of Astrobot, the only PS1 rep level in the game made Ape Escape. So it's very important, and I think the character is super cool. So that's why he's here as well. And then the final one was something that is more recently I've kind of discovered and been more of a fan of, and that's Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. Now, I always knew Lara Croft was popular, but wow, she was really popular. All 3 of her games for the PS1 are in like the top 15 highest grossing games for the PS1. I think it's mostly a European thing. I'm from Canada, so over here she wasn't as influential as she was in Europe, but still massive. Like, she was on magazines, you know, she was one of the first to get a movie. It's really interesting. So I picked her because I also think she's incredibly important to the brand and to that era especially. What's kind of funny though, now you zoom out with these 4 picks I have a crazy wild animal, I have a cool dragon thing, a quadruped short dragon thing, and then I have a child that basically fights with toys, and then a British aristocrat that uses actual real guns to fight. I think someone mentioned that it's kind of funny that, you know, all these characters are kind of fighting, hitting each other, and then she just comes up with like pistols and is trying to shoot a child during their fight, which I agree. It's a little weird, but when you have all the other characters that I've hidden in silhouettes, it makes more sense with the full roster that I planned. So then for this as well, I have 10 characters. Since this is just an art project, it's something I'm doing on the side, it takes a long time to do, I just wanted a really small roster. I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to make a game from scratch, and a fighting game at that. Fighting games are so hard to make from scratch. To have a giant roster of like 20 plus characters without any other games leading up is phenomenal, and is a huge amount of work. So for this, I was like 10. You know, if this came out back in the day, like 10's like a pretty healthy roster in my opinion. And that way it keeps it much more simple for me as well. So I won't reveal who the other characters are. I'm just going to stick with the initial 4 that I have here for the animation. But I guess just to hint at, the others that I picked are a lot more deep cut kind of characters, fan favorite kind of characters. I was always aware that there would be a couple of roadblocks at the beginning of this project whenever I was to start it. And I was right. The main hangups I initially had every time was Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. They are 2 characters that I've never done a character like them. Like I went over in a video, Crash's design is pretty weird. So making that model was a bit of a hurdle. And then Spyro is very similar, although maybe a little less. He's more straightforward. For his model, I did stick closest to the original design, taken from Modeler's Resource, of course. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty good, but that was kind of a challenge as well. And then Lara Croft, some people have joked that I didn't make her boobs pointy enough, but I think she turned out pretty good. I have more humanoid shaped characters, like adult, normal looking characters than my usual like chibi characters. So I needed someone on the roster that could kind of be that base character for a more adult anatomy character, and Lara Croft fit really well there. So going back to the PS3 version, people had a lot of issues with the roster. The probably number 1 comments I've gotten when showing off this project was people saying like, you know, All Stars Battle Royale, if it was good, this is what they should have done. It was just this easy. And what they're referring to is just having these characters really in a bombastic, expressive sense that I've put them in. So that's to say that the main issue with the original PS3 was the roster. So an issue that I have with the original game, and I don't want to throw any shade to the artists or anyone who worked on it, but the characters really do look like they're from other games. And for Smash Bros, this doesn't feel like it has the same issue. It feels like, even though they're totally different art styles, Fire Emblem characters and Animal Crossing characters and Pokemon, they all look like they're from Smash Bros. They all look nice. For Pasbr, they kind of look like they're all from these different games almost like the models were ripped, and it doesn't look very good to me. It's entirely possible I'm more anime pilled and I like more anime style looking characters, of course. But I think it's just, that's to me more of an issue, is these characters don't look like they're from the same thing. It looks amateurish in a way. That's something that I really wanted to do for my project, and why I decided to make these characters from scratch. I could find some of these characters online and just rig them and animate them, but then they all look like they're from different games with different art styles. They have to have that uniformity for it to look really good. Speaking about old looking games that have come out recently, I have a new project that I was a part of that I did a lot of the art for. HyperChess, available on Steam right now. It is a chess game that uses the Final Fantasy ATB system, where hectic chess matches ensue, and you can move at the same time, and it's supposed to be really fast and fluid. It's online, so you can play your buddies at chess on the internet and have a good time. It was made by Hey Grouch here on YouTube. Go look at their stuff. They're fantastic. They coded the game. I did the art along with my brother. This is Brandon. So please, if you like this sort of project, if you want to see more of this, the best way to support me financially so I can do more of this stuff is to buy these games that I work on. This or Merchant 64 is a huge way to support me. Okay, thanks. Anyway, what was I saying? And another element of the original that I quite like, actually, is the idea of the rival characters. So what they did in the PS3 version is every character kind of has a rival. And these rivals is who they essentially meet up at the end to do a big fight with. Some of the rivals that they did have, I don't love that they kind of went with more of a joke. It feels like they kind of picked the characters and made them rivals after. I've tried to kind of pick rivals that I think match up together nicely, or seem like cool rivals, to have characters like they make sense that they fight in a way. But for the original one, you have like evil Cole McGrath and Fat Princess. Like, there's nothing there, and I feel like from that sense, the rival system sort of kind of just felt tacked on. I personally feel like it should be explored more than it was, and maybe don't just make it a joke every time, like you have Poro versus Heihachi. I don't know, I don't love that it's kind of just like a little jokey that they put in there. I actually would have liked that they would have put like time and energy to really look at like who could rival who could really fight each other well. I think like Nathan Drake and Sly Cooper is like a perfect one. These kind of rogue characters that are thieves that are known for treasure hunting. I think that's a great like comparison to characters there. So some of them they do a good job with, but a lot of others they kind of just clone it in. So then the characters in the animation that are apart from each other and are facing each other would be the rivals. So you have Crash and Bandicoot at the beginning there, and then the other characters are looking at who their rivals would be. In the background, we see Polygon Man. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do Polygon Man, partially because I would have actually had to make the model. Who has a polygon model that I could use? I would have to make it, although it's not super hard to make. Nonetheless, it's a weird character. I honestly think that his only real claim to fame is from that original PS3 game, and nothing else really. Like, people say he was supposed to be the mascot, but I think he was just in like one magazine or one showcase only, and no one really liked him. He looks ugly. So running with that idea, that leads me to what would be a little storyline for this game. In some of this artwork I've made, I've tried to inject a little bit of story into it, and I think people can probably pick up on it a little bit. If you look at the background, I purposely made it look like the PS1 menu screen that you can access, where it's just kind of like a gray grid. I obviously added more color to it, but that's supposed to be what it is. So from that, you can probably infer that this is inside your PlayStation 1. That's what this is supposed to be. So that's why it's these PlayStation characters that are inside your PS1 fighting. And what's causing all of this is Polygon Man. Polygon Man is somehow inside every PS1. And he was, in his head, supposed to be the mascot. And Sony took it away from him and destroyed the code, but actually the code hid itself inside the chips or something. So Polygon Man's been hiding inside everyone's PS1, and now he is out and taking revenge on all the other mascots because he wants to be the mascot. I think this goes well with the PlayStation concept of having all these mascots. They don't fit quite like Nintendo, where you kind of, it's Mario, it's Link, it is a lot of them, but really it's mostly a couple, and they're the faces. For PlayStation, it's up in the air who's the face. It's almost like they could have one big fight. and see who is the face. I would argue right now it's probably like Kratos, but in the PS3 era, it was Sackboy probably, right? And that's why it starts with a PlayStation 1 boot up screen, because it's going into your system. All the characters are starting more as these orb data whatever, and then they're becoming their full characters to have a huge battle royale orchestrated by Polygon Man. And then to move into what the actual storyline would be, I'm really thinking a Subspace Emissary style, of course. Everyone loves that. In some of these magazine ads, if you notice, I put in a little bit of story screenshots that are sort of supposed to entice the person into thinking, oh, there's stuff going on here. The probably most important one would be this world map where you have Crash and Lara Croft traversing their thing. You can see the first world is that server space area that the animation takes place in, where they would probably start their journey, tutorial, whatever, and then you slowly move through the worlds. You can see here there's an almost Polygon Man version of Spike. That would probably be a lot of the characters you fight in these, is these Polygon Man versions, probably their essences turned into other fighters, much similar to those shadow fighters from World of Light. And yeah, to further add more depth to it, I would probably have it do two storylines, which are made up of the two rival sides. So you would have Crash and Lara starting on the one side and unlocking their characters that would be on their side of that opening animation. And then the other characters would be Spyro and Spike from Escape, who are going along their journey. And they would meet in the middle for an end battle. You'd probably have to beat one campaign and then beat the other. And then you could fight Polygon Man and end the whatever is going on inside the PS1. Let's actually get into the gameplay. I think a lot of people will be potentially annoyed that in my head for this project, I would keep the super system. Now, the super system is probably one of the more divisive aspects of the game, being that you can't defeat someone unless you hit them with a super move. And a lot of people just instantly kind of dismiss this feature, this mechanic. I do not. I think it's fine, but I think it was just made poorly. The main thing is it's horribly unbalanced. So if you don't know, you fight, you get meter, build at the bottom of the screen. At a certain point, you'll unlock the first version of the character super, then you keep fighting, you'll unlock the second version, and then the third version. And it's supposed to be escalating power levels of what these supers perform. But it's so weirdly unbalanced that some characters have really good supers, some have really awful supers. Some have really good, like, number 1 supers, and there's number 2 or 3, it sucks. It really is all over the place. And I think that's the issue with it. So for that, what would I change or add or improve upon that? And I don't want to get too crazy, don't want to say everyone's supers, but what I would do is I would remove the second super being totally different. What I would do is I would have every character gets their first super. When the bar is at 1, you get your super. When it gets to 2, it will be the first super, but a little bit upgraded. Maybe the range or something's a little more. And then when it gets to 3, it's just a screen wipe. Everyone gets this. I know taking away the unique elements might be a bit frustrating or unimaginative, but I do think it would level the playing field, much like how Smash Bros. Ultimate took a lot of the final Smashes and made them very simple and samey. I would go with the same sort of system. So then the main thing is the level 1 and 2 supers, I think, would have to be able to be comboed into. What I mean by that is if you look at Raiden in the original game, I believe it's that Raiden and maybe a couple other characters, their first super can be comboed into. So it's much more reliable. A lot of the other characters, very easy to evade, very easy to escape, really hard to hit with, very situational. It kind of sucks. Maybe a lot of them were meant to be comboed into, but they did it in a way that is really difficult. I would want a lot of the characters to kind of, especially with the supers, have a very similar playing field in terms of how it works and how it would do. As far as the actual character movesets go, now they were a bit confusing. I found a lot of the characters might have movesets that don't feel like they fit very well. For instance, I believe Dante's basic moves use sword slashes, but then I believe his up basic switches to his scythe. And it feels weird. It feels like you maybe press a special and you didn't mean to press a special. It makes you think maybe this was a special, and in my opinion, it really muddies the characters' movesets. I don't know, I always felt when I was trying new characters, I really had to pay attention to what I was doing, because it felt like everyone was just pulling all this stuff out of their butts, and it like every move kind of felt like a special. Nothing really felt like basic and special were separate in a way. And that's the main thing I would address. In terms of actual movesets of characters, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I don't really like in these videos when people do a full moveset breakdown. But if I were to just give a little bit of pointers for Crash, I mean, that new Smash Bros. 64 mod came out with a minute. I think he's flawless there. That's perfect. It's exactly what I would want in a character. But if I were to add a little more, in the Skylanders game that Crash was in, he spins a lot more, and most of the attacks go towards winding up a spin in some way. Personally, I would go with something like that. For Spyro, he only really has a couple of moves, so I think a lot of his basic stuff would basically have to be made up. Tail whips and swipes and slashes, and then, you know, he's got his fire and his charge and probably some glide thing. You could maybe bring Sparks the Dragonfly into it. And then for Lara Croft, I did think it would be neat if she had a special mechanic that was like her Uzis have ammunition, and when they run out, she switches to her pistols. But besides that, I think her basic should be a lot of kicking and punching with the guns, and then special should probably be more weapon-based, of course. Probably really acrobatic character, a lot of jumps and stuff. In the two Mario games, it's all jumping and shooting. And then Spike, of course, you have Stun Baton for basic, you have Net for grabs, and you have all of his little toys for special. I think he's very straightforward in that sense. Yeah, and if people have ideas for more movesets or even other characters and what their movesets would be, for this, honestly, just use Smash Bros. Button style, special and basic stuff. Like, I don't think there'd be a reason to really change that. Although the supers, you can come up with different supers, because that would be like the main elements, really. Now, I just want to say, when I was making this, it was something that I was really excited for. It was something that I was very passionate about. A lot of my friends and people I know were never really that excited about it. So when I was going to release it, when I was about to release it, I was wondering if it would just fall flat. And I was really relieved and excited when people actually really liked the concept. A lot of people were really excited and open to this idea quite a bit. And that was amazing to see, the response. You know, to have something that you're really excited about, and it's something maybe harder for people to imagine, because this early version of the game wasn't super good. But in my opinion, the concept has always been perfect. The idea has always been flawless. PlayStation All-Stars, a PlayStation Smash Bros, like, yes. So I really felt with this that I had to try extra hard to make something extra cool so that people really see. Because if I did this and really no one cared, then okay, well, this idea just sucks then probably, or no one really cares. So I really had to try my hardest to showcase it in a really cool way. And I think I hopefully pulled it off. Going forward, I plan on doing the rest of the roster. These silhouettes that you see are not completed, and they are just Lara Croft's model ripped apart into a silhouette of these other characters I have planned. I'm sorry, one of them. So for that, I would like to do that. For that, it's probably going to take a while. So sorry, you're gonna have to hang tight on updates for this, but hopefully I will get to them, you know, this year. It'll be done.